Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Think Small podcast. I'm your host, Denise Steinbring, and today's episode is for every small business owner who has ever wondered why some cities feel like a tailwind and others feel like you're running uphill. Why some markets attract talent, investment, and opportunity seemingly effortlessly, while others bleed their best people and best companies to other places. My guest today is one of the few people in America who has seen that question from the inside of 4 different cities and has some very specific answers for you today. So Jason Ball is the president and CEO of the 5-star accredited Lincoln Chamber of Commerce in Nebraska. And just so you know how rare that designation is, fewer than 1% of all chambers in the country have earned it. He also leads the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development and through his chamber role, the Lincoln Convention and Visitors Bureau. He has led the chamber and economic development organizations in Hutchinson, Kansas, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Round Rock, Texas, and now Lincoln, Nebraska. And each one of those experiences is a very completely different market, each one teaching him something that the others couldn't. Jason, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for joining.
Denise, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
Great. Well, before we get into what you're building in Lincoln, I want to understand the path that got you here. You majored in organic chemistry, worked as a bench chemist, then pivoted to an MBA and accidentally found your way into economic development. Can you walk us through that journey? Because I think the way you ended up in this field actually explains a lot about how you think about the work.
Well, yeah, it's, that word accidentally is doing a lot of work in that description. I use it often. Look, I'm a small town Nebraska kid, grew up in Sidney, Nebraska. That's the hometown and former headquarters for Cabela's, world's foremost outfitters, which merged with Bass Pro Shops here recently. And so I've seen economic development context in small towns, but came to college, fell in love with the sciences, thought that was going to be where I wanted to spend my career, and found out pretty fast I did not want to be by myself in a fume hood all day. And, went back nights and weekends to get the MBA, got connected with our university's technology transfer office. At that time, it was called the Office of Technology Development. Now it's called New Tech Ventures. And did that as an intern, and then an intern that just wouldn't leave after I got my MBA. And was working there when the Chamber of Commerce here in Lincoln, under my predecessor, Wendy Birdsall, hired me to come in and do economic development here. And I spent 5 great years with this organization. They taught me everything I know about the basics of economic development. I spent a lot of time working with entrepreneurs in the community and just loved the breadth and depth of what we get to touch here so much. I wanted to make a career out of it. So got to do that work in Hutchinson, Kansas, northwest of Wichita. Got to do that work in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and then Round Rock, Texas, which is the first suburb north of Austin proper. It's the hometown of Dell Technologies headquarters. Mm-hmm. And I'd be in Texas happy as a clam, except for my predecessor retired. And she and I talked shortly after she announced that change. And this was going to be my and my family's time to come back to Lincoln, which is home for us. Oh. And it's been 4 great years here, just having a fabulous time doing this work.
Well, that's great. So, most economic developers spend their entire career in one market. And you've seen what a small Kansas manufacturing city looks like from the inside, what a Sunbelt boomtown in South Dakota does when it has a growth-friendly tax structure, and what an Austin suburb feels like when the whole country wants to move there, and now what Lincoln is building, right? So what has all of that taught you about what actually separates the cities that win the talent and investment competition from the ones that don't?
Yeah, the cities and states that are going to remain relevant are the ones that are going to proactively make front-end investments that are going to create programs or create community assets like sites for development or pre-approved buildings or fast track permitting processes or put in the infrastructure to sites, like all of those things and more on the front end before we even have a business that we're talking to are going to separate the successful communities and states from the communities that are less successful. There's a trend right now. I know we're in a populist moment in our politics, and so from the left and the right, business is seen with a unfortunate degree of suspicion. When I think they should actually be celebrated entities. Anytime you have a business come in, anytime you have a small business start, they're going to create value that was not there, and create, when it's successful over time, generational wealth in your community. And so the communities that are going to go out and celebrate that and recruit it, and make the long-term commitment to creating an environment where those types of businesses can thrive and grow and succeed, they will be the successful ones. I can point to any number of past precedents and other examples where this has been the case. Whereas if you see that turn towards, well, how can we milk some value out of this business community, or worse yet, how can we really hold it to the fire and get it for all it's worth? Those are environments where those communities fail over time. They can no longer fund the type of activities that they want to, as community amenities and community support services over time.
Is there anything that a small business owner, founder, entrepreneur can do to really influence, if their city is successful or not?
Well, use your voice. I know that is a lot to ask of people that are founding businesses or running businesses and sometimes want to stay out of the public eye. Whether it's running for office, or please be involved in your local chamber of commerce if you're not.
That's a good plug.
The voice of a business owner will always carry more weight. Here I call them peers, right? I have an awesome board. They're as supportive as can be. I have an awesome set of members and investors in our programs that want us to be successful as a community and want our programs to be successful. And I am happy to be, out in the media telling people all the wonderful things about Nebraska and Lincoln, and making the case for great policy and a great environment for business. But it will always come across better and be listened to more deeply when it's coming from someone who's actually had to be responsible for that first payroll, that has been making successful hiring decisions for a number of years as a private business that's subject to taxes and those things. Those are the voices that I think are so often, unfortunately, missing, particularly in policy debates. Here in a state like Nebraska, either you had to have gotten to a place in your career or your business where you're either retired and you're in that phase of life, or you've created enough wealth in your business and had such wild success you really don't need to work in it anymore, or you're on the front end and you don't have the responsibilities that come along with it. We're missing this huge gap of wisdom and experiences in the middle career. Businesses that are business leaders that are doing that work right now. And so businesses need to use their voice. It really, really makes a difference in having better outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. The Small Business Expo research team just put out some findings for 2026 in their State of Small Business report, and they say only 10.8% of businesses feel fully supported by government policy. But that's a good reason to get involved, right? And it's not only a way to use your voice, but also to, surround yourself with like-minded business owners who might be facing the same sort of challenges than you are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We just came from a bill signing yesterday, celebrating some real progress on some business incentives and business programs at the state level. And I will never forget having an argument with one of our local businesses saying, look, I don't think this is going to have the type of political support that we wish it did. And they said, well, Jason, I've been talking with this elected official too, and I think we can get there. And I said, I respectfully disagree, but I'm going to fight with you as long as we can on this. And lo and behold, they were at the bill signing with us yesterday. It would not have happened without his voice being at the table. I would not have been able to sway that elected official's opinion all by myself. And now, many recognizing this is a small business podcast, look, many folks out there I can imagine are listening to this saying, Jason, that all sounds great. I got to keep the doors open and the lights on, and I got customers coming in, and I don't have a staff that's big enough that they can do without me for long periods of time. I get that. And so I just want to put in one more plug. That's why joining your local chamber of commerce and being active with them is one of the best investments that you can make, because people like me can go down to the state house just about any time we need to, or over to the city county building just about any time we need to.
Yeah.
So you don't have to leave your business to go do that. Now, it's not all about policy. There's a lot of other stuff that we do and that goes into this work. But at the end of the day, policy is the foundation for economic growth. And that's where I think we can make the biggest and most lasting difference as a community institution, which a chamber is.
Yeah, I love that story because people often wonder, does one voice make a difference? But you just gave us a perfect example of, how that business owner helped you get that over the line.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
great. If a small business owner who's listening right now is considering expanding into a new market, and given your background, what would you say are 3 questions they should ask before they sign a lease anywhere?
Well, I think one of them, this is probably later in the process, I think one of those questions needs to be, who else can I speak to in this community that's a business owner of a similar type of business? If you're a manufacturer, find another manufacturer to talk with. We are always eager to put prospective businesses in touch with other businesses here in town. That's where you're going to get the best information. As passionate as I am about doing this work, and as excited as I am about giving other businesses great information and accurate, truthful information, I am biased. I do want them here. And so, know that when you're talking, with a community that you're expanding to. I definitely think it is worth your time to reach out to the appropriate level of elected official. Here it would be a mayor's office or the governor, for example. Other states may work just a little bit differently, and that's okay. But have some communication with the lead influencers in the policy space as part of that process. Do they seem supportive? Do they seem excited about the business investment that you're thinking about making? If they are, chances are, if the market's right and their approach with business is right, you're going to have a good experience in that community and be successful, and they're going to stick with you over time. Look, and then the last thing, and I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to hear me say this, talk with the workforce and talent development assets in that community too. And this can be your community colleges, your departments of labor, your economic development agencies should be your first call to make, by the way. They can help you connect with all these recommendations. But no matter where you go, and I've done this in big cities and small cities and medium-sized cities, your earliest pinch point is still going to be labor, even if they have a high unemployment rate or a low unemployment rate, even if it's a place like the Austin metro area where so many people are trying to move, or a place like the Midwest that just doesn't see the same population growth trends as some of the more urbanized areas of the nation. Your number one consideration is still going to be, can I get the right people doing the job?
Yeah.
And so you really need to do your homework on that front. The building matters, the site matters, the logistics and supply chain all make a big difference. But boy, if you don't have the right people there waiting for you, or don't have a way to train or recruit them to come into that community and run that, that's always going to be a challenge. And I've seen this happen in big and small communities.
Wow. Well, that's really sound advice. You've given them the roadmap, so thank you for that. And it was a nice segue into where I wanted to go next. So you mentioned that Nebraska has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country, 2.5%. Well done. Yep. That sounds like great news until, as you mentioned, you realize that there's almost no available workforce left, and every business owner in Lincoln is competing for that same shrinking pool of workers. Yeah. You, in your leadership, have identified housing, childcare, and keeping Nebraska graduates in Nebraska as 3 things that have to change. But a lot of business owners feel like those are government problems, not their problems. Can you make the case that a small company CEO should personally care about housing supply and childcare access?
Well, yeah, on the unemployment rate, I will just say I'd never wish anybody to be out of a job unnecessarily, but it would be a little bit easier here in Nebraska and many other states in the Midwest to demonstrate some opportunity if we had unemployment rates just a little bit higher out here. With all that said, these issues like childcare, like housing, like workforce training programs and other community amenities, I even lump into that, are definitely a we problem. So I don't want to lay all of that at the feet of business. I think far too many people that are influencers in our positions of leadership right now are too easy to just say, well, look, business needs to do more. And I'm very sensitive and defensive when people say that. That being said, businesses have been stepping up, and I think it's out of enlightened self-interest more so than a place of just only wanting to see the community do better. And all businesses do support their communities. But look, I think our business community here really knows and understands that if they're going to be successful in solving their workforce opportunities that they're trying to solve, they're going to have to play a role in things like childcare. And we're finding new ways to celebrate that through things like the family-friendly workforce certification program that we launched just this year, and already have 39 businesses that we have extended that award and recognition to. On the housing front, again, this is attached to policy, but we're trying to allow businesses that earn state incentive tax credits to apply those to both childcare and housing development to the benefit of that business, to free up more money for that business to grow and expand and have housing and childcare options for their employees. And then lastly, what I will say, again, with an eye towards small business, I think sometimes they look at challenges like this and it's almost intimidating because they are capital intensive, and small businesses don't have that type of capital reserve that they can, have an in-house childcare, for example. There are ways to do it without having to go all the way into having an in-house childcare, for example. Sometimes it's just workforce policies or even how your HR departments work with, for example, young families or employees that are trying to identify options for housing as they're transitioning into the community. So there's almost a soft skills component to it as well. And you can do a lot with those and really separate yourself from other small businesses or large businesses that aren't making those types of programs and investments and priorities for their people fully present.
Are there resources through the chamber, for example, that, a business owner could have their HR person talk to you to get some ideas about employee resource programs, camps for kids in the summer, things of that nature?
Yes. However, I can't speak for the 7,000 chambers that are out there. I will tell you it's going to be a different picture in different communities and different states based on what the profile of resource and support organizations look like there. But I will tell you from the four organizations that I've worked for and led, first and foremost, we view ourselves as resource brokers. So if a business comes to us and they need a supported loan guarantee, for example, with their bank, well, we don't do that at the chamber. However, if you contact our office, within 2 phone calls, we're going to get you connected with the Nebraska Business Development Centers, our SBDC program here in the state, that does do that work and can help you work with your bank towards qualifying for that. And same thing for any number of childcare, housing, workforce training, K through 12 programs. Take your pick. We are happy and proud to connect people with the resources that we may not provide directly on our staff, but know exactly who to call and have usually some pre-qualified understanding of the types of businesses and the types of scenarios where those programs can be of greatest impact and really help shorten the learning curve and finding who to talk to and when. We do that on a very regular basis. So again, it's another reason for you to contact your local Chamber of Commerce or your local economic development agency here we're all one big office. Many communities, they will be separate. And if they are separate, you should be talking to both. But your chamber professionals should be able to help you do that.
Yeah, and I love that new positioning. We are resource brokers, right? So that's
Yeah,
a new way for people to think about their local chambers.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So you recently came out opposing a Lincoln City Council minimum wage ordinance. You're fighting tariff impacts on Nebraska manufacturing. You're lobbying for an East Beltway, for more airline services, for childcare access. Most small business owners think that policy advocacy is somebody else's job. Can you walk us through maybe a specific moment where a policy decision, one most business owners weren't paying attention to, either saved or significantly hurt a small business in any of those 4 states that you've been in?
Yeah, yeah. Well, just because it's been so on our minds here in Lincoln here recently, I'll point to a lot of programs we're doing related to infrastructure investment in streets and roads work. So, and particularly for small business, if you hear of a community town hall where they're going to talk about a major roadway construction project that happens to go by or near where your business is at, you need to be at that meeting. Your chamber professional or one of their staff team members should also be at that meeting because it can be very, very disruptive to business. And likewise, our chamber has been involved in, convening community conversations about where and how these investments can be done maybe differently on a different at a different speed. And often to save money or minimize negative impacts or maximize long-term growth. And so I know a lot of folks because they're living their lives and doing their thing and working with their teams and raising their families and pursuing their dreams, and that's great. But the infrastructure stuff is things that really, really do matter for long-term growth. Even if it's not in your area, you want to make sure that your community is making those investments for growth. If not, it will catch up to the economy that you're in. And so, yeah, I can point to several, times when our office has been very involved in infrastructure investment conversations. And I think sometimes businesses are surprised when they find out what the impact or opportunity there could be.
Yeah, interesting. All right, Jason. Well, last question for you. For a small business owner anywhere in America, not just Lincoln, who is listening right now and feeling like the policy environment, the talent environment, the business climate is working against them, what is the one thing that they should do on Monday morning to start turning that around?
Well, I will again go back to, if you're not already a member of your chamber, please join your chamber. And if you're not part of their policy committee or even just kind of attending some of those types of events, I would strongly recommend that you just pick 1 or 2 of those and get plugged in at that. I know a lot of people think of their chambers as a great way to meet people or try to expand business and find a client, and those are great things. We do those things at the Lincoln Chamber very proudly. But again, policy is a we issue. And if you're not helping shape it as a business community, I can promise you somebody else is. And often they do not have your business's best interests and sometimes not even your community's best interests at heart.
Or maybe have never managed a payroll before and they're making decisions that are going to impact.
That's right. That's right. Look, I have a colleague here that says that policy is made by the people that show up. That's so true. So find that way to get involved. Again, I am very sympathetic to people that say it's really nasty out there. I don't want to do that directly. That's fine. Work with your chamber. However, if it is on your heart that your community could be in a better spot from an economic growth perspective, and I think people still are very hungry for economic growth, which is the baseline to this moment we're having in the dialogue about affordability. Mm-hmm. Well, we would be more affordable if our nation was seeing more average economic growth year over year at 3% or more, according to the U.S. Chamber. So think about running for office. And it doesn't have to be, it can be an appointed position to your local planning commission. It does not have to be, mounting a campaign for mayor or state senator, but you know what? We need business voices in those offices too. And I can tell you for elected officials that don't come from that world, that have not known the sleepless nights that come along with a difficult moment for payroll, really do just have a steep learning curve when it comes to the business policy decisions that they're making. And so your voice at that table really needs to happen, whether it's through somebody like me that you're telling what to say on your behalf, or whether it's through your own involvement directly, which I think is more powerful but more time consuming. That needs to happen. Our nation needs you. I can promise you, whatever community you're in, they need you too. And chambers are a great conduit to get involved in that and find out how to do that better.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. So what's next for the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce? What does the next 3 years look like for you? I'm sure you're up to some really cool things.
Yeah, we're a market that is focused on making investments in community assets. Right now, we've got a new library that's going to begin construction soon. We've got a major inside of town highway project on O Street, one of our main thoroughfares that's just kicking off. We are going to spend the next 3 years and probably the 3 years after that working on what's called an East Beltway, which would be the completion of Lincoln's Beltway loop around circumnavigating the city. And so we've got some major projects that come there, but then we're also focused on things like how can we make smart investments in assets for youth sports, for example, and create more of a destination opportunity for people to travel to if they want to watch people play ice hockey or watch their kids play baseball. I know none of that is unusual. Every community is talking about that. And managing growth, we're trying to do that in a smart way for our needs, and every community is going to be a little bit different.
Well, great, Jason. This has been a genuinely important conversation. The work you're doing there really matters, and so does the perspective you bring from 4 very different markets. For our listeners who want to learn more about you or about the Lincoln or Chamber, where do they go?
Yeah, so they can find our whole team and all sorts of information about our strategic plan and our programs at lcoc.com, as in Lincoln Chamber of Commerce.com, lcoc.com. And then I also recommend that they check out selectlincoln.org and visit lincoln.org. Those are the 3 main websites that we send people to, whether they're visitors or looking at making a business investment here, or our members. And those are all interconnected on the back end of our websites as well. And then the last thing I want to point out is at the Chamber's main landing page on lcoc.com, you can go to our newsletters, our newsroom tab, and go down to the Business Link podcast. There you will find video podcast episodes that are award-winning now from the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. That'll give you a flavor for what's going on in Lincoln too. It's not just myself, it's many of my colleagues here at the Lincoln Chamber, posting interviews with other business leaders and community influencers about what's going on in Lincoln. Great place to get plugged into what's going on in our community.
Yeah, is there a must-see attraction for anybody that wants to come visit?
Yes. Several. If you're a sports fan, you're going to want to see fabled Memorial Stadium, where the Huskers play, even though we've had a tough time of it in recent seasons. But also for car enthusiasts, we are the home of one of the best automotive museums in the nation. It's the Museum of American Speed, which was established and continues to grow, founded by one of our businesses, Speedway Motors. That has been a leader in mail order auto parts, some that they manufacture directly, others that they work through outside suppliers. And so if you're part of the racing community, Speedway Motors is something you already know about. I am not a gearhead. I do not know cars. I don't understand motors at all, but I have been through that museum several times. You can use 4 hours easily without missing it. And even if you're not a car guy or gal, have a great time there.
Awesome. Well, to all of our Think Small podcast listeners, if today's conversation made you think differently about the role your city, your chamber, and even your own voice play in the business climate you're operating in, do something about it. Show up. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for your time, Jason.
Thank you, Denise.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?